So recently I brought in an asset pack, actually from a Blender asset pack that I bought a long time ago. And I experimented a bunch and learned a bunch of new things that I wanted to capture in this video around the Solaris Component Builder, the material variations, and basically the geometry and material variations in Houdini is just so cool that I just wanted to show kind of where I landed. I brought in this entire library here, but I just wanted to dive in and give you an example of what I can now do with this. So what you're seeing here on the left are three variations, and these are three different models of the same kind of plant type that I brought in through this in this asset pack. And I've used the component builder mechanism in Solaris to build these geometry variants. And I'm going to step through this, but I wanted to show you the end result. I wanted to demonstrate the end result here, because what I can now do is I now have these three variations of the same plant, okay? And what I can do is not only do I have the three geometric variations of this plant, I also have a number of material variations. And let me show you this. When I select this material variation over here, I have exposed a number of USD Prim Vars that allow me to do things like change the hue of the flowers. See now how the flowers have a different hue in each variation? And that's because I've exposed this hue value. And again, I'm going to drill into this, but I just wanted to show you the demonstration of this. And I'm giving it a different hue based on the index of the geometry. Okay, so 0, 1, or 2, that's right here in this index. And I can change that hue by just, messing with this number. So as I change that number, you'll see the actual flower variations change. Okay, but beyond that, so now I've got control of the hue of each geometric variation, but I can also control the view across them all, and more than just the hue. Like for instance, there's a lift attribute. So now I'm going to just brighten up those leaves. See what's going on there? Or let's turn that off and let's just pump up the saturation of the flowers, not the leaves, the flowers. And here I can actually get a variation by I've exposed a low and a high. And see now in each variation, I can change the hue of all the flowers in a particular variation just by changing and playing with this slider, right? And not only that, I can control through a different material variation, I can control the color of the leaves with the same mechanism. So now the leaves are changing colors, and I can play with the saturation of the leaves by turning on these vars, okay? Now, I don't know why you'd want these super blue leaves, but the thing that I'm trying to capture here is how much variation and control you have by exposing these values in the material and leveraging the geometry variations. Okay, so enough of that demo. If that's interesting, stick around. So now let me break down how I did this. So I dropped a component builder. And if you aren't familiar with the component builder, basically check it out. But if you drop a component builder, you'll get this kind of setup. Let me make this. See this small little setup? You'll get this. And in order to get the geometry variations, you need to drop the component geometry node, which you then plug your geometric, so basically different variations, geometry variations that you want to include in this one component. Okay. And I'll show you how this is leveraged. Okay. So here I am. I'm going to drop this is one of the component geometry. So this is what it looks like. I bring in an FBX, right? A flower plant. I do a little wrangling on this just because I want to change the shop material into the name, or actually I'm reducing the name. I'm making it more simple is all I'm doing there. And then I've created a little HDA, and honestly, this HDA is just, it's very, very simple. All it does, because I was doing this a lot, all it does is it does a match size. I rename the shop material path so that I have a name now. Okay, so I take the shop material path and change it to a name. But more importantly, and this is super important, is I use the connectivity SOP in order to drive every leaf that you see here or every flower petal. I give it an ID. So you'll see the class is -1, right? I also give myself the ability to say, hey, do I want this to be leafless or what have you? And I'll show you what that does in a second. But what I'm doing here is I'm saying, what are the names of the things that you want to index? And so in this particular case, I want the flower and the leaf. So whatever these names are, those are the things that are going to get indexed. So you'll see how this bark brown has a -1 index. So I'm not indexing the bark, but I am indexing all the flowers. And let's see, flower plant. Okay. And that becomes super interesting in the materials. Let me go back up. Okay. And exact same thing on each of these variations, just a different FBX comes in, and I give it the same deal. But here's where the magic is. The magic is actually in the material itself. So in this material library, I double click and go in. Now the bark is not interesting. Okay. This is a classic, just typical, PBR material. It's the leaf and the flower material that's interesting. And it's interesting because I'm exposing these USD Prim Var variables. So here is where I am exposing or bringing into the material network that class ID that I generated through that component. So this int class was created back up into where I brought in the actual geometry. This connectivity is what created that number, okay? And that's how I connected this up. So now if I jump back into the material, you'll see how it's used. So here, basically, I'm taking whatever that ID number is, and I'm giving it a random float value, which I then feed into a range. And this is where I'm controlling the hue low and hue high. These actual values show up in that material variation SOP that I was showing you earlier. So hue low and hue high, this shows up outside in this material variation node right here, hue high, hue low, right? And if I was to create another Prim Var, so let me click on that, you'd see all those Prim Vars showing up in this pull down. And that's how you access it, okay? But let me continue down the path with the material library. So then you use that. I'm piping that into a range because I just want to control the value of the out low and out high of this material range, which I then pump into the hue. And this hue is just a color correct node over the actual leaf image, the actual albedo texture that I have for the leaves. Okay. And then I continue to punch this through so that what this does is it gives me the ability to control every leaf on every variant, but the specific leaves. So like this variant here, this is what this is controlling. Okay. It's giving me a value of those ranges on this particular variant. And that can be different on each variant. What this USD Prim Var is doing, going into this color correct, is this is changing, it's giving the same hue across all the leaves. So regardless of variance, I want to be able to control and drive a consistent hue. And that's what gives me that capability, right? And that's it. Like just with this simple exposure of those values in those color correct nodes, you then have that ability to change those leaves. And so if I jump into the flower, it's the exact same mechanism except for the flower material. So here I did the same thing, exposing the class, which gives me control over every flower petal, gives me the hue and the hue high, which is just driving the material range into the color correct node. And here I'm also exposing, that's where this lift, that's just basically a lighten, and this is where I'm driving the saturation as well. I expose these USD Prim Vars so that I can manipulate it through a material variation SOP. Okay? I hope that makes sense. It's, it may seem complicated at first, but all I'm doing is exposing those values so that I can manipulate it when I'm in the stage level through a material variation SOP node, LOP node actually. And that shows up here. And so now through this, I just have infinite possibilities here when I start dropping instances and I start dropping this into like a stage manager, like over here. What you can then do is once you save out those USD components, you can then bring it into your stage manager, plop it into an asset gallery, which you can easily save. Let me show you what that means if you're not familiar with this. The beauty thing about a component builder is it gives you the ability to not only save it as a USD file, right? Is I can add it to an asset gallery. And so what I've been doing is I've been building up an asset gallery of all these different assets such that when I open up that asset gallery in the stage manager, so here's my database of all those different assets, I can then easily come through here and look at them, drop them in, see my variants of that particular guy, and then start to play with variations. And here I just like, okay, what's this variation starts to look like? Maybe I want to change some of these things. Give it a second. And off we go. And, here I'm dropping in the Karma Sky. So it just gives you so much control over the look of your different components that I was just surprised at just how good this was and how quickly you can build up an asset library that can be leveraged inside the Solaris stage. Okay, hope that makes sense. Super powerful mechanism. Highly recommend playing with this because it's just stunning how easy it is to create just a ton of different assets that can be manipulated through material variation and geometry variation.